Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I hope the week's gone well. It's gotten a little cooler here in Nairobi overnight, thank goodness, because it was really hot. Let's move on to Africa. This is an article in Quartz Africa. In most cases, the desire to control the internet is rooted in the government's determination to control the political narrative. Point. Already in 2019, there have been shutdowns in Cameroon, DR Congo, Congo Brazzaville, Chad, Sudan, and Zimbabwe. Last year, there were 21 such shutdowns on the continent. This was the case in Togo, Sierra Leone, Sudan, and Ethiopia, amongst others. The internet is seen as a threat because it disrupts older forms of government political control, particularly the control of information. The stranglehold on the production and dissemination of information has always been an invaluable political tool for many African governments. The loss of this control at a time when the media has brought politics closer to the people presents governments with a distinctly unsettling reality. Social media, for example, inherently encourages political indiscipline and engenders the production and circulation of alternative political narratives. I take you back to something I wrote in the aftermath of the overthrow of beautiful Blaise Compaoré, and I was writing about those events in Ouagadougou, and I said then, what's clear is that a very young, very informed and very connected African youth demographic, many characterize it as a demographic dividend, but for beautiful Blaise Compaoré turned into a demographic terminator, is set to alter the existing equilibrium between the rulers and the subjects, and the rebalancing has begun, I said. Uganda, the ruling party has approved the candidature of President Museveni, who's currently 74 years old, for a 6th mandate. Have a watch of Mindspeak with President Museveni. I hosted him, I think it was in 2011. Be careful for what you wish for. Strongman exit can leave chaos. Bloomberg politics. For almost all of Mugabe's nearly 4 decades in charge, his decisions were unquestioned, and his ruling ZANU-PF's grip on power rarely wavered. By replacing him with Emerson Mnangagwa, the military won a factional battle within ZANU-PF, weakening it, sidelined the once powerful police force and secret service that were key Mugabe allies. The glue it had in the past 38 years, that cohesive, forced consensus under Mugabe, it's gone. This is Tendai Biti. He's a member of the MDC. What's happening today in Zimbabwe echoes the experiences of other African countries and bears similarities with the chaos currently taking place in Venezuela, 6 years after the death of Hugo Chavez. In Ivory Coast, Felix Houphouët-Boigny's 1993 death in office triggered a power struggle over succession and ultimately a civil war that divided the country in two for almost a decade. Somalia hasn't been a functioning state since Said Barre was toppled in 1991. And in Congo, the overthrow of Mobutu Sese Seko after 32 years in power sparked the world's most deadly conflict since World War II. In Burkina Faso, the intelligence services fell apart with the ousting of strongman Blaise Compaoré, making the country a target of jihadist attacks. There's usually one conductor playing the orchestra, Vincent Fouché, a research fellow at the National Center for Scientific Research in Bordeaux, said of West Africa. Once the leader is out, his political party is completely weakened because there is no ideology that keeps it together. Really interesting article looking at so many different scenarios. You don't have evidence that this is a government that can actually make decisions, whereas under Mugabe, you had no doubt who was in charge, Biti again. It's a fragility that I have not seen before. The state is in a permanent state of paranoia. That's why they're putting soldiers on the street, picking up people. 21st of January, I said what is clear to me is that Zimbabwe is at a tipping point moment. And then I was referring to Kapuscinski. The choice of that moment is the greatest riddle of history, the actual moment it tips. And he's also saying if the crowd disperses, goes home, does not reassemble, we say the revolution is over. And this is what Mnangagwa is desperately trying to do, have people so nervous that they won't come out. Zimbabwe, however, on the economic front has made a move. They've devalued its quasi-currency in an FX regime overhaul, dropped its insistence that a quasi-currency known as bond notes are at par with the dollar as it overhauled FX trading and effectively devalued the securities. The central bank will immediately establish an interbank foreign exchange market in which the bond notes will be denominated as electronic money known as RTGS dollars. While the government has previously insisted that bond notes and RTGS dollars are worth the same as US dollars, the units currently trade between 366 and 380 to the dollar respectively on the black market. The announcement amounted to an effective devaluation, said Harare-based economist John Robertson. He didn't mention it by name, but they've devalued it. We should now see a convergence of a stable rate going forward. Buyers and sellers will now need to meet and agree on a rate. RTGS dollars will be used by all entities, including the government, to price goods and services. The use of RTGS dollars would eliminate the existence of a multi-pricing system. Prices should either remain at the current levels or decline in sympathy with the stability in the exchange rate. The refusal by foreign traders to accept bond notes as legal tender resulted in payment problems for companies such as gold miners and grain millers and exacerbated shortages of raw materials. Shops also charge customers different prices depending on which they used to pay, offering discounts as high as 70% to those who used real US dollars. The introduction of a Zim dollar will be just in name, but the RTGS dollar is essentially the Zim dollar. Steve Henke, who's a professor of applied economics and expert on hyperinflation at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, said it would sink like a stone. They've created such a mess with the bonds and RTGS dollars. What they should do is to get this cancer out of the system. I think they've done the right thing. Actually it was long overdue, so I for one think, and I'll disagree with the inestimable Steve Henke on this matter. 21st of January I said that the mind game that ZANU-PF had played on its citizens with this bond notes has evaporated in a puff of smoke. 8th of October last year I called it voodoo economics, because at that time you had 9.3 billion zolars in banks compared to $200 million in reserves. 8th of October I said one domino that has suddenly tipped over is Zimbabwe. 21st of January I said the point I'm seeking to make is that there is a correlation between high inflation and revolutionary conditions. The petrol price hike was the proximate cause and ignited the already dry tinder on the ground. That was Pierre's Pigou. The country's forex cover ratio a little while back averaged 3.2% January through November 2018. That means for every $100 in circulation, the country has an average of $3.20. Moving on, but staying with Zimbabwe, Vice President Chiwenga is unable to speak or eat. And that probably explains the redeployment of 4 military men done in his absence. I said in an interview earlier in the year with Al Jazeera, what we're watching across this continent, whether it's Gabon, Sudan, or DR Congo, Zimbabwe, Chad, and Cameroon, is a kind of tipping point moment. Zimbabwe could run out of bread in a week after flour stocks dwindle due to the country's failure to pay for imported wheat. That's on Reuters. We are left with less than 8 days of national bread flour supplies. Minister of Finance Tito Mboweni is seen here presenting the aloe ferox, which he says is resilient, sturdy, and drought resistant. As I said previously, and you look at the volatility in the currency, this was a virtuoso Yehudi level performance by Tito. South African all shares up 5.6% year to date. It was a roller coaster of an afternoon for the Rand. After selling off heavily on Mboweni's budget speech, it reversed all its losses and ended up stronger. Last time I looked, it was at 13.99. Egyptian pound at 17.541. Nigerian all share up 3.77% year to date. Ghana has picked 5 banks for a maximum $3 billion Eurobond. This is that moment. I said it was an opportunity the market was giving African governments. They need to take it with both hands. Ghana's stock exchange composite index is down 2.84%. Tanzania has rebased its economy and calculated the economy size in 2015 at $40.56 billion, up from $39.05 billion, using 2007 as a base year. Barrick Gold's cost of doing business could shoot up with this acacia mining deal that's being touted. That link is on Rich Wrap Up. Zambian central bank mulls China debt swap to build reserves. Is considering asking China to convert its dollar loans to the southern African nation into renminbi as it seeks to build FX reserves that have plunged to the lowest level this decade, said the central bank governor. The bank is looking for ways how we can maybe get some swap arrangements. If it can be denominated in renminbi, that could also mitigate the need to get dollars. Right now, that debt is also serviced in dollars. Zambia's external debt almost doubled to 9.5 billion in September from 4.8 billion in 2014. Cost of servicing foreign loans this year is equivalent to about 90% of the nation's international reserves, according to RentCap. The Bank of Zambia is also in talks with gold producers to add the metal to its reserves portfolio. We're not just sitting idle and watching the reserves go down, they said. Let's go to Kenya. Diamond Trust Bank, an official, has been charged in the Dusit attack case, facilitating the financing of the attack, which left 21 dead via huge M-Pesa transactions. Eastleigh branch manager, charged with failure to report suspicious activity regarding proceeds of crime and anti-money laundering. Takes me back to what I wrote on the 28th of January. And I quoted Don DeLillo, who wrote this about terror. Terror's response is a narrative that has been developing over years, only now becoming inescapable. It is our lives and minds that are occupied now. This catastrophic event changes the way we think and act moment to moment, week to week, for unknown weeks and months to come in steely years. Our world, parts of our world have crumbled into theirs, which means we're living in a place of danger and rage. I used to think it was possible for an artist to alter the inner life of the culture. Now bomb makers and gunmen have taken that territory. I said the truth of the matter is more people die on the roads every day. Terror is a mind game. The response, I thought, was professional and effective. The city moved forward. I extend my condolences to all of those who lost their lives, but a lot now depends on whether this was a one-off or not. Currency, shilling is at 100.2, just above that key 100 level, and as I said at the end of January, a move below 100 would catch a lot of people off guard. The Nairobi All Shares up 10.76% year to date. NSE 20 is up 6.27% year to date. Thank you kindly for stopping by.